let's just start with the big conversation of the day, which is fumbles. So let me look at the fumble breakdown. So we had 5 fumbles. Heinrich had 2 fumbles. We lost both of them. Snodgrass had that fumble on the opening kickoff.
Oh, God.
Alex Bullock had a fumble, but we didn't lose it. Jeff Sims had 1 fumble, and it was lost. That was on that 4th and 1 that we elected to go for.
Yeah, you have the opening drive of the Northwestern game. You throw a pick. They get the ball right there on the plus side of the field. And then this game, opening kickoff, don't even get the ball. Have the fumble. They get the ball right there. The defense makes that stop. How precarious situation that you're in. At what point, if you're winning the toss, right? At what point do you just be like, just send the defense out?
Yeah, 100%. I completely agree. Like in 09, remember that's what we started to do towards the end of the season in 09. Was like, just put the defense out on the field first. Like
their offense is going to go backwards. We're going to play field position game.
Totally. It was totally like that. I mean, and fumbling the opening kickoff when you get to receive in the first quarter puts you at such a distinct disadvantage for the game if it's going to be like a competitive back and forth game, because now they have a full clock to work with beginning of the first quarter, and now they get the ball at the beginning of the second half as well. So as soon as that happened, I was like, man, we are already behind the 8 ball. That's just how that works. All the fumbles are bad. I think the one that made me the most, probably the 2 that made me the most nervous, were the opening kickoff one. I was like, all right, well, time for our defense to come out and show up. And once they showed up, my nerves sort of went away. And then the Jeff Sims one on 4th and 1, just because it was like, okay, now here we go. We're late in the game. We've been winning this whole game. Now they have a little life. We just have been doing a bunch of stupid stuff. Like, what are we going to do? But by that point, there was only 6 minutes left. We were still ahead by 2 scores, so I wasn't too nervous.
Even that, I wasn't too nervous. Now, we've seen colossal collapses before. We've talked about this, that it was kind of like there's a changing of the guard, kind of just with the energy in the team. We feel like an actual football team. We don't feel like Nebraska trying to be a national champion and winning 3 games. We feel like a football team that's going to hit you in the mouth, play you hard, and win, even if it's ugly. Like we feel like a complete unit, even though we have flaws in different areas. We feel like we're coached. We feel complete, even though there's a lot of that outstanding stuff there. So when you see, because as a fan, when you're watching and we fumble the opening kickoff in years past, what would happen? The defense would come out flat, even if they've been playing well, and they'd give up an opening drive touchdown. The offense would come out, give a 3 and out, and then they would get the ball back and then drive down, and we'd be 14-0 before the first quarter's over, right? Yeah. So it just feels different. It feels like they're playing for each other. They're playing for pride, and it comes down to coaching. It just
completely agree. I mean, I'm looking at the play-by-play because I want to give you an example of exactly what you're talking about. So the end of the half, it goes to halftime, and Purdue comes out. They get the ball to start the second half. We 3 and out them. They punt, and then we get the ball back, and we're riding high. We're up 14-0. We're like, yeah, let's go, and then we fumble on the first play of the drive.
Yeah,
and Purdue gets held 4 plays minus 7 yards, and they try to kick the field goal. And we return it for a touchdown. So now we're up 21-0. Purdue gets the ball back, 3 and out. Boom. There we go. That sequence right there proves pretty much exactly what we're talking about. We were up 14-0. A Scott Frost team could jump up to on a team 14-0. We had seen that happen. But we're up 14-0. A little adversity comes our way. Yeah, 17-0. Some 24-0 sometimes. But a little adversity comes our way, and we would see them crumble. But we didn't see that. We saw, like I told you on the phone earlier, I was like, we're seeing them play their best football whenever adversity just happened. Like their backs were just against the wall. Something bad just happened and they need to make a play. This game especially, it felt like anytime there was a little momentum heading towards Purdue, someone did something to bring it right back our way. So,
listen, like, that just really comes down to coaching and how you're framing this for your players, right? Because before the past basically 6 years, you had one bad thing happen, the entire team crumbles, and it's like they expected to be so close. Mm-hmm. How much of like the media, outside media, inside media, the coaches, oh, we're right there, we're so close. So when something bad happens, oh well, we're so close. People don't expect us to win because we're so close. We're close. So it's about getting rid of that and saying like, who gives a shit if we're close? Let's go out and play football.
Yeah, and I love how this conversation, I agree, but I love how this conversation on negatives has quickly turned into another conversation on positives.
Okay, let's get to a negative. Let's get to my one really big negative. My two negatives for the game, really. Yes. The fumbles, be more careful with the ball. Purdue was doing a very good job stripping, ripping, hitting the ball. They were.
Right.
There's stuff you can do as a runner to counteract that. Be a little bit more cognizant of that, especially Harburg. Today was the first day that he was a little bit more reckless with the ball running, right? Because he's been pretty safe running the ball. The second one, I feel really bad for Sims. Super bad. Like he's 24 to nothing at that point, right? Yeah, 24 to nothing. And we get there. And he gets in the game after Harburg fumbles on the previous drive.
Before he went into the game, too. Right before he goes in the game, Matt Rule brings him right up, face to face, a foot from Matt Rule's face, and he looks at him. He goes, "Protect the ball." That's all he said to him.
Oh my gosh! And it's a fourth and 1, right?
Yeah.
So that whole sequence
coming off a timeout. Not coming off a time. The whole sequence is coming off a timeout, I believe.
So the whole sequence, for if anybody's like actually like listening to this that didn't watch the game. So there's a sequence, fourth quarter. It was a 4th and 1. They jumped off sides, but none of our linemen moved, so they didn't call it. They let the delay of game happen. We punted the ball, but they jumped off sides on the punt. And then so they took the penalty to go back to 4th and 1. And then they ran basically a quarterback ISO with a lead blocker.
And it looked like 2 or 3 people went the wrong way.
So it wouldn't be an ISO, it would be a power.
Power.
Embarrassing. So like basically a QB power with a lead blocker on a 4th and 1 from the shotgun with Jeff Sims. Again, just run the brotherly shove. What are you doing?
Honestly, the only thing he looks so huge up there. I thought that's what they were gonna do.
I know, but the only thing you can't do in that situation is fumble it in a situation where they can pick it up and score. The only thing you can't do. And that's the thing that happened. They picked it up and they scored. Like that was probably his name was. I know I've said this a couple times.
Kydrin. Yeah.
But that was probably my only really faux pas from a play calling perspective. Like if you're going to do that and you trust your defense, line up, run the quarterback sneak. There's no way they're going to return that.
Yeah.
That is so rare. Now, on the play they ran, that can happen, especially with a quarterback he has the yips. He doesn't want to make a mistake. If you're thinking, I don't want to make a mistake. I made so many mistakes. I know I'm a good player, but I don't want to do this. He's going to try to do too much, which he did, instead of just going down, following on it. If you trust your defense, that right there on that side of the midfield, completely fine. But
man would be a deadly tight end, bro. He would be a deadly tight end. He really would. Like in that position, he has the size for it. He has the athleticism for it. Like he'd be a good tight end. Like that's the position to me.
Yeah.
On offense, if he wants to play on offense at the next level, I could see. I mean, his body, the way his body is, like if he really wanted to like play football, he could be a pass rusher. But like I could totally see him being a tight end. I mean, he's 6'5". He's 6'5", chiseled like an Adonis, and he can run a 4.5.
His
I mean,
body
like
chiseled
his
like
body.
Adonis.
Yeah.
You're sitting over there drooling about a guy that has fumbled.
Yes. No,
for
I'm
more than
saying he's
touchdowns
still
than thrown.
I'm saying he has the body and the athleticism to be a football player.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you have to be the quarterback. You don't have to be the quarterback. Like in baseball, if you have the yips and you have problems with mind games and stuff, playing mind games with yourself, you don't want to make that dude like your ace starting pitcher. You know what I mean? Like that, it's the equivalent basically. So
yeah, like when the Phillies ran out Kimball for another closing round, and he had given up 2 games at that point, and then he gave up another one. Sorry, I'm mostly a Phillies sports person, except for Nebraska and the Phillies.
Last negative I have is I have to give them their flowers before I give them a negative, because they were a new unit today on the offensive line, new people starting, but they had some breakdowns for sure. So they got to get that figured out. In no way am I harping on that, but yeah, I'm just saying, like, they got to improve. We got to improve in that area. Heinrich was under pressure a lot. And things and running backs were being touched behind the line of scrimmage way too much for my liking.
Sure.
So
the Purdue did a great job of stunting.
Yeah.
On a line,
were bullying our guys. They were bullying.
They were, and they knew where our weak spots were, and they attacked them really, really well. Something I will say, Jacob Hood, that dude is freaking huge.
He's a house.
He's huge.
He's a house.
He's Prohashka, but on the like he played on the other side. So I was like, oh my gosh, those 2 guys. Who knows how he practices and how good he actually is? But he's freaking huge.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. The unit gave up a lot of early pressure. Purdue was able to get in way too early, way too often.
Yeah.
But they did enough to where we could be successful with what we wanted to do for the most part. And especially for a unit that's held up by duct tape. Most colleges really can't function losing 2 veteran starting linemen.
Yeah.
Like, however you want to think how those 2 were playing, especially one of them, which I won't call out, but they're veterans and they weren't playing terrible. Like, it's not like they were a liability every single play, and it's like, oh well, at least the backup's going to get in, So most colleges
they were a liability on some plays. Let's tell the whole story. They were a liability sometimes, and so the apprehensive excitement slight, just because of other people getting reps, was sort of like, well, maybe this will shake things up. And sometimes it's like, oh man, we have ourselves a unit. Cue the win streak music. You know what I mean? Like, but yeah. So it's a negative. They definitely left a little bit to be desired in certain plays, but they played overall. They played good enough to win. The fumbles were not their fault. There was never like a snap that was fumbled or anything like that, I don't think. No. It was just the Purdue was aggressive on defense. Aggressive.
They were. Yeah. And as far as the West goes, as far as like whole like units that the offense is at least going to face, Purdue is going to be the best one that we've seen so far. Probably Iowa is probably going to be the best.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it's probably going to be Iowa, Purdue,
before
Wisconsin.
Today, let me tell you this statistically. So we don't
statistically. I'm just talking about eye test.
I know, but before today, Purdue was like 11th in the Big Ten in most defensive categories. Like they did not have a very good defense. But I see where you're coming from on the defensive line. I'm still not convinced that like their unit is maybe like the 3rd best in the West, but defensive line wise.
Sure, I should have been a little bit more specific.
Because number 4 and number whatever the other number was, those 2 guys, they were good. They were kind of athletic freaks, to be honest.
They were. I mean, I honestly think their defense was better than Illinois.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably some truth to that.
Because we left how many points on for Illinois? Like a crap ton.
They were certainly more aggressive than Illinois. They certainly punching the ball out constantly. Like I said before, their settings on Madden were set to aggressive on both pass pro and fumbles. But yeah, so I don't know. Yeah, Purdue. For a 2-5 football team, now a 2-6 football team, I'm moderately impressed with them, especially those defensive linemen. Hudson Card proved to be, sort of what we thought he was going to be. He was a decent, he has a decent arm and doesn't have the surrounding cast really on that offense that they had last year. There was not really a Charlie Jones. I think probably number 3 was their most impressive athlete on offense to me. He made a couple of cuts that were just pretty impressive. And then number 4, I forget his last name, Dowds or something with a D. But yeah, he was pretty good as well.
Rondale Moore.
No, not Rondale. Definitely not Rondale Moore. They didn't have a Charlie Jones or a Rondale Moore on there.
No, and again, a good team for our pass defense. We did get lucky a lot. They had. Yeah, I think there was a stat right before the end of the game,
hasn't it? It's weird. It's been a bit of a theme, right?
And I do have a theory for that, but I'll go into this first. So they had 5 drop passes. We had 2, and that was with a little bit of time left in the fourth. They showed that stat. I don't know if that's how it ended up being, but the drop passes that they had were at very critical junctions. The drop passes we had, they didn't really matter towards the game. They just didn't. Because I don't remember them. I remember the one.
There was only like 2 of them.
Yeah. So,
I mean, the DOS one, I think, counted as a drop.
It did.
And then I don't remember who else had one, to be quite honest with you. I don't even remember. Pretty much, it felt like if we were going to pass, it was going to be complete or incomplete. One of the 2.
Sure. That tight end that they had dropped a couple. They had a couple deep shots that got bobbled, and then a couple over the middle. So a good team is going to be able to capitalize on those plays, and it's gonna be kind of hard to watch. But there is a psychological thing that happens when you've been smacked so hard, when you know a defense is going to hit you, no matter like what. When you know a defense is flying around and they're very physical, there's a mental thing that goes on in your head as a receiver, and not playing at that level, but playing receiver against people that were way bigger than me and I knew were going to smack me.
Yeah.
I could catch the ball however I wanted to. But if I knew I was going to get hit, your hands get a little bit more loose. Some of our like quote unquote luck is that, because if you look at it, those people are getting smacked even if they're not getting the ball. If you just look at the defense and how they're like playing, and there's a little shove here and there. There's a little smack every time somebody else comes up to block them. They're attacking that block. There's smash mouth football going on. And I think that has something to do with like the quote unquote drops, because if you're going across the middle and there's a hard knocks defense coming up, even if you're not thinking, oh, well, they'll target me and then I'll get 15 yards. That's not going through their head.
Right.
What's going through their head is a guy's coming up and he's going to smack me. I need to catch this and get down. Oh my gosh.
Well, I completely agree with that. I completely agree with that. And I started thinking, you articulated it better than I thought it in my mind. But I started thinking today during this game, I was like, well, maybe it's just like how hard we play on defense. Maybe like they're more nervous because like we're going to smack them. Yeah. You know what I mean? Basically. So that's been a theme these last 3 games, especially as these receivers dropping balls. So yeah. That's all for negatives. There was a lot of positives thrown into those negatives. But
I mean, okay, when you play like how we did,
like, it was an awesome game.
Even with like the past 2 wins, like exactly, we played so well that we are just kind of glazing over those fumbles because they didn't matter. Five fumbles, and they didn't matter. They didn't matter. It's really.
I mean,
funny.
It's almost to the point where it's almost like this from a Purdue perspective. After the 4th one, and you still have the goose egg, you know what I mean? It's like, we're not winning this game. You know what I mean? And there's something degrading even about that. It's like, we keep taking away the ball from this damn team, and they keep stop. Like, we have no points yet. And so it gets to a point where, like, it's almost a strategy. Keep giving them the ball, keep letting our defense stop them. But anyway,
I mean, even the past 2 games, they were wins, but they were ugly wins. And yeah, we had the fumbles today, but it was a lot more pretty of a win, wasn't it?
I mean, yeah, like wasn't a high bar. It wasn't a high bar. You know, like if we're comparing this game to like college football as a whole, it was an ugly game.
Yeah.
But if we're comparing this game to what the Big Ten West games in Nebraska have been so far, it was a beautiful game. It was the game of the century. I mean, like it was.
Yeah.
It's gonna be remembered 100 years from now. I mean, like. Please go ahead and like that video and subscribe to the channel. We appreciate the support that we get from you guys, and we're hoping to continue growing. Blake and I enjoy talking about Nebraska football on here, and we hope to get more and more support as we continue to grow and as the Huskers continue to get better. So give us that support and catch our podcast on all platforms. Also, subscribe to us on Twitter, or X as the people want to call it, at @CHusker_corner, and go follow our Instagram, Cornhusker Corner. Thanks for watching.